Noting papers allow the DSB to raise issues for informal consultation distinct from the formal consultation process via decision proposals. In late 2023 and early 2024, the DSB, in collaboration with industry, conducted an experiment to explore how the CDR can be used to help people refinance their mortgage. This is a summary of the Account Origination Experiment Report provided with Noting Paper 348 that resulted from that experiment. The Account Origination Experiment Report demonstrates a mechanism for exploring possible additions to the CDR. In particular, it explored how certain actions might be introduced to the CDR regime, specifically to enable mortgage refinancing. The report comprises of several sections. The following summarizes the content of each section. For full details, read the Noting Paper 348, NP 348, Account Origination Experiment Report. Abstract. The Account Origination Experiment focused on how the CDR could enable new-to-bank customers to submit a loan product application and facilitate mortgage refinancing. To assess the most compelling opportunities for CDR enablement of this use case, the experiment group collaborated on end-to-end consumer journeys and designs that were tested in consumer research and co-developed experimental technical standards to facilitate application discovery requirements and data disclosure. The experiment identified several ways that the CDR could enable this use case, with existing consent mechanisms and the leveraging of existing LIXI standards, as well as hypothetical CDR enhancements that could include a consent uplift, a warm lead instruction, and voluntary CDR standards. This paper discusses the findings and insights following the completion of this experiment. Experiment Overview. The experiment ran for 30 weeks starting on 5th October 2023, with industry participants meeting weekly. Industry participants represented accredited data recipients, ADRs, data holders, DHs, and LIXI. The experiment progressed in 3 broad phases focused on conceptualization, evaluation, and analysis, through which opportunities for adoption and improvement were considered. The conceptualization phase of the experiment focused on the problem space, using end-to-end customer journeys to outline existing processes and highlight considerations within and adjacent to the CDR. The evaluation phase of the experiment tested refined consent flow designs, experimental standards, and various artifacts in consumer research. In the experiment's analysis phase, participants assessed the viability and desirability of the proposition based on findings from the evaluation phase. The 4 core hypotheses evaluated in the research are then outlined in this section, including how they were measured and any associated assumptions. Key findings and opportunities. This section outlines the key findings generated during the conceptualization, evaluation, and analysis phases. During conceptualization, it was identified existing CDR mechanisms can already enable simple bank account origination, but they are underutilized and suboptimal. CDR should initially focus on application submission rather than an end-to-end account origination process. An application endpoint must be client authenticated in some way. Existing regulatory frameworks will need to be considered beyond the CDR. Upon evaluation, it was found The CDR could add value to bank account origination with existing CDR data and an extension of PID to aid the discovery of application submissions. Application may be complex for a CDR standard, so an existing LIXI standard may be preferred. CDR-enabled mortgage refinancing was viewed by consumers as valuable, streamlined, and trustworthy. After analysis, existing CDR consent flows could be simplified to more effectively support this use case. Initial support for this use case with voluntary standards could ease implementation burden. A free LIXI 2 standard could be offered to facilitate application submission. Curated tooling, purpose-based consents, and use case-specific guidance may help enable key use cases while also reducing implementation costs. Standards enhancements can make the account origination process more effective. CDR-enabled account origination can be considered a form of action initiation. Hypothesis results and conclusion. The hypothesis results are summarized in this section based on the findings of the experiment and the following key considerations that have been identified. 1. Consumers found the CDR-enabled mortgage refinancing use case to be streamlined, trustworthy, and valuable. 2. CDR data standards for discovering and submitting bank applications may be of material value and could likely reduce switching costs. 3. The CDR could initially provide a voluntary PID standard for the discovery of application submission requirements. 4. The mechanism for application submission may be complex for a CDR standard, so the use of the existing LIXI standard may be preferred. 5. Support for this use case could be made more effective with consent simplifications and enhanced data standards. 6. Voluntary adoption may still generate economic activity in the absence of a mandatory designation, but adoption itself would ultimately depend on the right market conditions and mutual cooperation between industry participants. And 7. The complexity of action initiation depends on the use case. While mortgage refinancing is complicated, the use of CDR action initiation to enable it can be simple and still provide commercial value and consumer benefit. Next steps. The DSB welcomes community feedback, including suggestions on areas that should be prioritized for action and further investigation. The DSB will provide a noting paper on voluntary standards for further discussion of this concept. Subject to public consultation, the experimental account origination standards will be converted into voluntary standards. If voluntary standards are made, the DSB aims to gauge success by measuring factors such as implementation and adoption rates. New CX artifacts will be created to support the community in the form of use case blueprints to outline how CDR consent mechanisms could currently be used to enable mortgage refinancing. And the DSB, LIXI, and the respective chairs will discuss how to progress a free LIXI 2 standard and the subsequent adoption of them in the CDR data standards. Appendices. The appendix provides further details on all findings and opportunities, detailed hypothesis results, experiment participant comments, and consumer experience research. The DSB is planning further use case enablement experiments. To provide feedback, add your comments to NP348. Thank you for participating in developing The Consumer Data Standards.